For decades, John Deere was the backbone of American agriculture. Farmers relied on its iconic green machines to power their fields, sustain their businesses. But now, that trust is unraveling. Layoffs, outsourcing, skyrocketing equipment costs. These issues are fueling a crisis that threatens the entire $34 billion farming industry. Farmers are fighting back, and the future of U.S. agriculture hangs in the balance. This isn't just about tractors. It's about economic survival. From small-town farming communities to major global trade markets, John Deere's latest moves have set off a chain reaction that could reshape American farming forever. For nearly 2 centuries, John Deere has been more than just a company. It has been the beating heart of American agriculture. But today, that legacy is under fire. The company has announced mass layoffs across multiple U.S. factories while shifting more of its manufacturing to Mexico. The decision, which impacts thousands of American workers, has sparked outrage among farmers, factory workers, and politicians alike. Critics argue that by outsourcing jobs, John Deere is abandoning the very people who built its reputation. Beyond job losses, farmers are also dealing with another major frustration: John Deere's increasingly restrictive repair policies. Modern tractors are packed with proprietary software, preventing farmers from fixing their own equipment. Instead, they must rely on authorized dealers for even the simplest repairs, leading to costly delays and expensive service fees. Many farmers feel trapped, with some turning to alternative brands or even pushing for right-to-repair legislation to regain control over their equipment. The crisis in American farming doesn't stop at John Deere's decisions. Crop prices are collapsing, and China's role in global trade is adding another layer of uncertainty. With fluctuating demand for U.S. agricultural exports and increasing competition from other nations, farmers are struggling to stay afloat. Meanwhile, former President Trump has entered the debate, calling out John Deere for prioritizing profits over American workers. His criticism has fueled a larger political battle over U.S. manufacturing and the future of rural jobs. With America on the brink, the stakes have never been higher. Will John Deere's shift to Mexico backfire, or is this just the new reality? For American farming, farmers across the United States have depended on John Deere's iconic green machines for generations, using them to cultivate fields. With a legacy spanning over 180 years, the brand became a symbol of innovation, reliability, and the American farming dream. But today, that dream is unraveling. Once an unshakable force in agricultural machinery, John Deere is now caught in the middle of an industry-wide crisis. Declining sales, frustrated customers, and economic struggles are shaking the very foundation of a company that was once a pillar of strength for American farmers. The numbers paint a troubling picture. The U.S. agricultural industry, once valued at more than $34 billion, is buckling under falling crop prices, rising operational costs, and shifting global trade policies. Farmers who have trusted John Deere for generations now find themselves facing an uncertain future as the company itself grapples with its biggest challenge yet. So how did it come to this? How did the undisputed leader in farming equipment end up in such turmoil? It all started with a wave of layoffs that sent shockwaves far beyond the factory floor. John Deere has long been a cornerstone of farming communities, employing tens of thousands of workers across the country. But in recent months, the company has made drastic workforce reductions, shutting down jobs across multiple plants in response to plummeting sales. Since 2015, more than 4,500 jobs have been cut, and the numbers keep climbing. This year alone, nearly 200 factory workers in Iowa lost their jobs due to production slowdowns. In towns where John Deere is often the largest employer, these layoffs have hit hard. Families who have depended on the company for generations are now struggling to find work, and local businesses that relied on their spending are feeling the financial strain. But these layoffs are just a symptom of a much deeper issue. Farmers are simply not buying new equipment. With declining crop prices and rising operational costs, many are postponing or canceling purchases of tractors, harvesters, and other essential machinery. When fewer farmers buy, John Deere sells less, forcing the company to scale back production and lay off workers. Many farming communities were already struggling, and losing high-paying manufacturing jobs only adds to the crisis. Entire towns are built around John Deere factories, and when the company cuts jobs, it's not just employees who suffer, it's an entire way of life that is being threatened, and it's not just the workers feeling abandoned. Farmers themselves, are walking away from John Deere in record numbers. For generations, the brand was the gold standard in farm equipment. Farmers were willing to pay a premium for John Deere's tractors, harvesters, and precision farming tools because they trusted the brand's reliability and performance. But that loyalty has been fading fast. One of the biggest reasons? The company's aggressive anti-repair policies. Farmers are outraged that they can't fix their own tractors without going through Deere's restrictive and expensive software system. The company has locked its equipment behind a digital wall, preventing independent mechanics and farmers from making even basic repairs without paying exorbitant fees. This has fueled the growing right-to-repair movement, with farmers across the country demanding the ability to fix their own equipment without relying on Deere's authorized technicians. The backlash has been so severe that some states have passed laws requiring John Deere to ease its repair restrictions. But for many farmers, the damage is already done. As frustration grows, farmers are actively seeking alternatives to John Deere. Brands like Kubota, AGCO, and Case IH are gaining traction by offering more repair-friendly equipment at competitive prices. Some farmers are even turning to smaller, lesser-known brands or imported machinery from countries like China, once a market dominated by John Deere. The company's refusal to adapt to farmer demands is driving loyal customers away, and with financial struggles mounting, losing even a small percentage of its customer base could spell disaster. But as farmers leave, global economic pressures are making Deere's situation even worse. A massive economic shift is reshaping agriculture worldwide, and it is hitting American farmers and John Deere hard. One of the biggest factors? The collapse of U.S. crop prices. Since 2022, the price of corn has plummeted by 37%. Soybean prices have dropped by 24%. Wheat down by 35%. For farmers, this is devastating. Lower crop prices mean lower profits, making it even harder to justify spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on new machinery. Then there's China. For years, experts predicted that China would become one of the largest importers of American-grown food. That prediction never materialized. Instead, China has heavily invested in its own agricultural sector, ramping up domestic food production at an unprecedented pace. The result? Less demand for American exports and yet another financial hit for U.S. farmers. The global economic downturn is making matters worse. Inflation has driven up the costs of everything from diesel fuel to fertilizer. Meanwhile, high interest rates have made borrowing money more expensive than ever, making it nearly impossible for struggling farmers to take out loans for new equipment. These pressures have combined into a perfect storm that is devastating American agriculture. And John Deere is feeling the full force of it. In an attempt to escape this storm, John Deere made its most controversial decision yet, one that sparked outrage across the country. When the company announced plans to shift part of its manufacturing operations to Mexico, the backlash was immediate. Farmers, workers, and politicians across the country saw the move as a betrayal, one that prioritized corporate profits over American jobs. For John Deere, the decision was all about cutting costs and staying competitive. The company argued that moving certain production tasks, such as cab assembly, to Mexico would help optimize operations. By keeping high-value manufacturing in the United States while outsourcing lower-skill tasks, Deere claimed it could reduce expenses without entirely abandoning American production. On paper, the move made financial sense. Mexico offers cheaper labor, lower operating costs, and favorable trade policies. By shifting some tasks overseas, John Deere believed it could reinvest in innovation and secure long-term profitability. But for American workers, the decision felt like a betrayal. Thousands of John Deere employees had already lost their jobs due to layoffs. And now, instead of rebuilding, the company was sending jobs out of the country. For many, this was a direct blow to the very communities that had supported Deere for generations. But if the company thought it could make the move quietly, it was in for a rude awakening, because it sparked one of the biggest political firestorms in recent history. It didn't take long for former President Donald Trump to weigh in. Known for his hardline stance on trade and manufacturing, Trump saw John Deere's move as a direct attack on American jobs. And in true Trump fashion, he fired back with a massive threat. At a campaign rally, Trump vowed to impose a 200% tariff on John Deere imports if the company followed through with its plans to shift production to Mexico. This was more than just political rhetoric. It was an economic warning. Trump had previously used tariffs to pressure companies into keeping jobs in the US, and his administration's tariffs on Chinese goods had already reshaped global trade. Now, he was turning that same strategy against John Deere. The logic behind the threat was simple. If John Deere wanted to manufacture in Mexico, it would pay the price when trying to sell those products back in the United States. A 200% tariff would make it nearly impossible for the company to profit from imports, forcing it to reconsider its decision. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Investors panicked, and John Deere's stock dropped by more than 1.5% in after-hours trading. Wall Street analysts feared that such a tariff would cripple Deere's supply chain and potentially lead to even more layoffs. Would John Deere back down, or would it push forward, despite the risk? That remained to be seen. But Trump wasn't the only one reacting, because workers and farmers were about to take matters into their own hands. John Deere's decision to move jobs to Mexico wasn't just a political issue. It was personal for thousands of American farmers. For decades, Deere had been a symbol of American farming strength. John Deere's success was deeply intertwined with the prosperity of rural communities. But now, many of those same communities felt abandoned. In response, farmers began organizing, protests and boycotts. Across the Midwest, rallies erupted outside John Deere dealerships, with farmers demanding that the company rethink its decision. Some took an even stronger stance, stopping all purchases of John Deere equipment and turning to competitors like Kubota, Case IH, and AGCO instead. Even John Deere workers joined the protests. Many feared that more jobs would be lost if outsourcing continued, and for long-time employees, watching jobs move across the border felt like seeing their own livelihoods vanish in slow motion. The public pressure put John Deere in a difficult position. Already struggling with declining sales and rising costs, the company now faced backlash from its most loyal customers. Could it afford to alienate the very farmers who had kept it in business for generations? As this political and economic battle rages on, another force is quietly reshaping the future of farming, and it's coming from halfway across the world. For decades, the United States has dominated global agriculture. American farmers have not only fed their own country, but have exported billions of dollars worth of crops and equipment worldwide. But that dominance is now under threat, with China leading the charge. Once viewed as a nation that would always rely on imports to feed its massive population, China has flipped the script. Through government investment, advanced technology, and strategic policies, China has rapidly transformed itself into an agricultural powerhouse. One of the biggest shifts has been in farm equipment manufacturing. Farmers worldwide once relied on brands like John Deere, Case IH, and New Holland for high-quality machinery. But now, Chinese companies are producing tractors, harvesters, and precision farming tools at a fraction of the cost. Take YTO Group and Zoomlion, two Chinese manufacturers that have aggressively expanded their market share in recent years. While their equipment may not yet have the same reputation as John Deere's, their prices are hard to ignore. In some cases, their tractors and harvesters cost half as much as their American counterparts. And for farmers struggling with tight budgets, affordability is becoming the deciding factor. Regions like Africa, South America, and even parts of Europe, Chinese-made farm equipment is rapidly gaining traction. Many developing countries that once relied on American exports are now choosing China's more affordable alternatives. For John Deere, this shift presents a major challenge. If farmers in global markets begin turning away from American-made equipment, the company's future as an industry leader is at risk. But China's growing influence in agriculture extends beyond just machinery. It is also reshaping global crop production, and the effects are rippling through the U.S. farming industry. American farmers are facing a brutal economic reality. Falling crop prices are making it harder than ever to stay afloat. Many point to China's increased production as a major factor, arguing that the country's growing agricultural output is flooding the market and driving prices down. Since 2022, corn prices have dropped by over 37%. Wheat and soybean prices have also plummeted, leaving farmers struggling to turn a profit. For years, many believed that China's growing population and urbanization would make it one of the largest importers of American agricultural products. The United States, a top food exporter, was expected to benefit from this demand for decades to come.